Daniel, how are you?
I've been great. I'm really excited for this.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you
Thank
for
you for
having
coming.
me.
You know, in this studio, if you're here, you're special.
Awesome.
Only special, only special people get to be here.
Awesome.
You know why? Because everybody who comes here, they have something to say. So I hope today, and I know, you have something to say.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start with this. How old are you?
Well, I'm 20 years old.
20?
Yes, 20 years old.
Wow, I thought you were older than that. For some reason.
Thank you.
In a good way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
20. Why I invite you here about your missionary trips. When was your first missionary trip?
My first missionary trip was actually last year.
Last
in
year?
2022.
That was your first missionary trip?
First missionary trip
When
ever.
was it?
In June of 2020.
June. Okay. And where did you go?
Sri Lanka, actually.
Sri Lanka. Okay.
Yeah.
Why? Why Sri Lanka?
So I was actually part of a Bible school called SMBS, Slavic
SMBS in
Jacksonville, Florida.
Jacksonville. Okay.
A Slavic Missionary Bible School where we are discipled and taught how to become missionaries. And in that program, we actually have opportunity to go to missions with them. And the initial goal was actually, I thought I wanted to go to Nepal. I was praying about it. I wanted to go to Nepal because my mentor, Eric Babarikan, he went to Nepal 8 times, and I really wanted to go to Nepal. And but God just guided me to Sri Lanka. And before all this, the last thing I wanted to do while in ministry was kids ministry, and God softened my heart. And when I was in Sri Lanka, it was kids ministry and youth ministry, and God opened my heart to. Yes, I might have preferences of I want to do this for the kingdom, but in actuality, God can soften your heart or just change your whole idea of what like ministry is. But yes, mainly in Sri Lanka, we did kids ministry.
Okay, so you count there. How many people went there?
6.
6 people.
Yes.
6 brothers.
It was 2 guys and 4 girls.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any like missionary base, like a hotel or any place to stay?
Well, actually, we were the first time. We were the first team there in like SMBS history, and like for bases, we actually were. There was a base in central Sri Lanka, in Kandy, the city, and we would often go to Trincomalee, which is further up north of the island, which takes around 3 hours on bus. And so early in the morning, we would wake up and we would go to Trincomalee, or we'd go to these villages and cities that are 3 hours away from our base. Technically,
so there is a base.
There is a base,
Okay.
but mainly we were in hotels.
And then you just invite people or kids to the service, or how do you?
The ministry that we worked with in Sri Lanka specifically, we had a host pastor that is in charge of 500 home churches. And so he's in charge of discipling these pastors as well. And usually we would go to these churches that this pastor disciples, and we would do kids events, like Sunday school or youth conferences. But yeah, mainly that's how we did our ministry. We would just go and people would be there, and mainly we would just do the ministry.
What do you do? Preach to kids, or
so
tell them Bible stories?
Yeah.
Or
So
how do you do that?
yeah. So for specifically for kids ministry, how we did it is that we actually we would have plays, and we did Daniel and the Lion's Den, because we did a skit, and then we would actually play games with them. Mainly for Daniel and the Lion's Den, it was angels versus the lions, and so it was like a tag game, or we would have like a freeze tag or just tug of war, but mainly it was a lot of activities, since we would arrive there early in the morning, and we would like be there for 4 or 5 hours. doing kids ministry, or on the road, or but yes, when we had the opportunity to preach the gospel, we would incorporate it in our stories.
And you have to give a lot of candies too. Right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is your second trip?
Yeah, my second trip was recently, actually. I went to Japan in the month of December all the way to February. So 3 months in total.
3 months. Yeah. Why Japan?
So, why Japan?
Because usually, when you're talking about mission,
exactly.
you think about Mexico, India, Africa, well, Sri Lanka, yes, Nepal, yes.
Yeah.
But Japan.
Yeah, exactly. That was not my intention at all. When I was actually in Sri Lanka at the time, I read 2 of these books. One called The Heavenly Man by Brother Yoon, and the other one, Good Morning, Holy Spirit.
You like to read a lot?
Yes, definitely. And so when I was reading it during my Sri Lanka trip, I was reading all these testimonies that this pastor had in China. And it was talked about the house church in China, how it exploded, how it grew like rapidly over just a generation. And one thing I love the most is house churches. We also
like a home group.
Yeah, home group. Home group, okay. House churches. And I mainly saw that in Sri Lanka, and I really wanted to do more ministry in the house churches. And so I got connected with a family in China that were doing ministry for 15 plus years. And I was going through all the visas requirements. I was doing all my research. And then I slowly, like, the doors started to shut. The opportunities started to shut to go to China. And I thought to myself, well, if the Lord does not want me in China at this time, I'll just start reaching out to churches in Asia. And so I emailed churches in Japan. I emailed churches in all the surrounding countries.
How do you find them? Just go on Google and churches in Japan?
Exactly. Wow. That's exactly how I
just email it to them?
Yeah. I emailed them. Like I was reading these websites that are all in Japanese. And I managed to go to the email.
Translated?
I managed to go to
Google
the
Translate?
Yeah. Use the Google Translate. Managed to go all the way to the
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, definitely. And I had to translate my paragraph into Japanese so they could read it as well. And I was praying about it because I was like, it has to be from the Lord. Like, nobody goes reads the email and says, "Oh, this is a missionary. I'm going to accept," like, from a random missionary in America. Like, and I was just praying and I was fasting at the time. And I was like, Lord.
Did you tell anybody about it?
No.
Not even your brother?
No. I was still praying, and I was like, and I knew that I was like, Lord, if it's from you, then you will, open the way. And 3 churches responded. And when I remember, I was getting the emails from the churches, and I was just lost for words, because one pastor in Hokkaido, actually, he was celebrating his 40th anniversary as a missionary in Japan. And at the same day, I emailed him. And we emailed back and forth, and I realized that he went to Japan at the same age as I was at the time, 20 years old. And he actually lived there and grew a church in ministry.
Is he from the United States?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And he's like in the 70s now in Hokkaido, which is in Japan.
Okay.
And so
that's how you got invited?
No, but like all these emails kept coming in. And then the ministry school that I was a part of, we had a prayer night. And there's this other ministry school in Orlando that called Sold School, a school of living disciples.
Orlando, Florida?
Yeah, in Kissimmee. And they drove up to Jacksonville, Florida. And we had prayer with our class and their class. And one of their leaders, church leaders, they asked me if I ever wanted to do missions like in Asia specifically. And I didn't tell anybody about my emails, anything. So then he asked me that if I of course I said, oh yeah, absolutely. I think I wanted to go to China. I wanted to go to Japan. And then he said, I'm actually going to Japan this December. Do you want to come with me? And I said yes.
Wow.
I just took a step of faith, and I said yes. And
now is the time to tell your parents. Right?
Yeah, now is the time to tell your parents. And I remember the conversation was like, of course, I just told my mom, and I was like, hey, I'm going to Japan. And I remember it's like, yes, like they were very supportive.
Really?
Yeah.
From like first minute.
Well, not the first minute. Not the first minute. They did say
How did you approach your parents then? Just came and say, okay, I'm going to Japan? Or?
No, not really. I just said because I had a series of people that were prophesying over me during my time in that ministry school. Mm-hmm. And I just felt peace about it. Of course, that's not a one way. One way you shouldn't just go step in faith. But like I knew that if it's not from the Lord, then it's not from the Lord. I'm not going to Japan to be a tourist. I'm going to Japan to be a missionary. And so I understood that it like only the Lord can make a way, and only the Lord could just bless my ministry. And so I just told my parents that I had a lot of peace confirmation from other people. Mm-hmm. And to me, like, if I'm going to Japan, so be it. If I'm not, it's okay. Mm-hmm. And of course, when the parents have parental concerns about their kid going to Japan, they're of course worried about that.
You didn't work back then, right?
No.
At that time.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't work back. I didn't work at that time at all.
So who bought your tickets?
So finances wise.
Finances.
Finances wise. So the Lord provided. People started to donate when
when you tell them your idea,
I just told them about that. I'm going to Japan, and I wanted to go to do missions in Japan, and people started to just donate.
How much is the ticket to Japan?
Well, my ticket that I bought was $1,200.
And how many planes you had to fly?
I had to fly 4 times in Japan. 4 times in Japan. So I had to arrive in Tokyo. And then later on, I had to go from Tokyo to Hokkaido, which is up north in Japan. And from Hokkaido all the way down to Okinawa, which is very close to Taiwan.
It's a smaller town?
It's very small.
Like
it's
Lincoln?
An island. It's not like Lincoln. It's pretty big. But it's a small island. But there's a lot of people.
It's an island?
Yes.
Oh.
There's an island. And then I had to take a ferry, a 7-hour ferry.
Ooh.
All the way to this small island that only has 13,000 people on it, and nobody spoke English.
Okay.
Apart from the pastors.
Who met you there?
So the pastors.
Pastors.
Yes, pastors there. And
American pastors?
Or Japanese.
How did they speak to you? They speak English?
Yeah, they spoke English. But it was like I had to learn Japanese at the same time because the pastors weren't with me all the time. And so
how they brought you to the house and just left you alone? Or?
No. I actually stayed at the church with them. Mm-hmm. And their church is actually one floor is the church and the second floor is their home.
Pastor's home?
Yeah, pastor's home. Mm-hmm. And so I would stay, and they also have a guest house as well.
They provide food for you, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They provided food for me. They provided me a room. And then your ministry started like... Yeah.
You did like kids ministry again?
Mainly it was teaching English.
Teaching English?
Yes.
To kids or anybody?
Students mainly, like high school students.
High school.
And
they come to church or you go to college?
Mainly, specifically for that island, the pastor's wife, she's a English teacher. Mm-hmm. And so she would tutor high school students about English. And through that, I would preach the gospel. And they would ask why in the world was I in Japan in the first place.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
And so But in a series of events, it's like people, specifically in Japan, the island, they were very curious. And so I would just preach the gospel to them and they would hear it. Some never heard it about Jesus at all.
You were preaching in English and the teacher was translated?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. She was a Christian?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But majority of the students are not Christian.
So what religion do they have?
There's two. There's Shintoism and then there's Buddhism. Okay. Shintoism is the Japanese national religion. A lot of, like, if you see on like poster cards or photos of this shrine, red gates, that is Shintoism. And there's Buddhism that over time, the history of Japan actually, Buddhism was introduced in Japan. And so the religion that the Japan people had was Shintoism at the time, and Buddhism and Shintoism actually merged in the early history of Japan. And so now you can't really separate Buddhism and Shintoism because it has its own religious dogma or entity in itself. But a lot of people are only religious by practice, by tradition. Mm-hmm. And they would just say that they're Buddhist, or they would say that they're Shinto.
Because they live by that specific tradition.
Yeah, mm-hmm. By that specific tradition. Mm-hmm. There's this missionary in Japan. He one of his quote is, a Japanese person gets born as a Shinto, married as a Christian, mm-hmm. died as a Buddhist. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, because in the Japanese culture, it's family is very important. Mm-hmm. Throughout the history of Japan.
Do families have lots of children? Or
mainly for Japan, nowadays, not at all. Because of they used to. But mainly, the family name is extremely important. And that holds with Shinto beliefs that... and Buddhist beliefs of ancestral worship, and thinking about your ancestors, or thinking of what your ancestors would do. And so I was talking with this missionary in Japan, and I asked what was the biggest problem in Japan. And she told me that it's mainly that a lot of Japanese housewives, a lot of Japanese women want to be Christians, but they can't, because they hold their family name and they hold the traditions that come with the family name.
What if they do become a Christian? What's going to happen?
Well, nothing much. Not really. If they do, which is amazing, hopefully they are plugged into community, of course, in a church.
Their community or siblings will reject her?
Not really. It's just seen as taboo. It's seen as a bit weird. Mm-hmm. And not a lot of Japanese want to be Christian because they see religion in itself as sort of like a weird taboo, just a thing that they won't mess with, because Japan has been like known for serious, in the early 2000s, terrorist organization cults that would harm people. Mm-hmm. in Tokyo or in Osaka, mainly in the main cities. And a lot of Japanese people see like religion as sometimes in a negative light. And recently, actually, if Shinzo Abe, which is the former prime minister of Japan, got assassinated. And the reason why is because the assassinator, or the assassin, he blamed him for his mom's death because of this cult that formed in Japan, which is called the Resurrection Church, which they believe that Jesus already came and there is already a prophet there that like reads Revelations, and it utterly twists the scriptures. But on the side note, when Japanese people hear church, they automatically think of Christianity. And so when that happened, a lot of Christians were treated unfairly or treated weirdly with their friends. Mm-hmm. I listened to a pastor in Tokyo tell me that there's this one of the congregation, like their kids were bullied because they were Christians because of the fact that the assassination happened, but it had nothing to do with Christians or Christianity.
So churches in Japan, they're like at homes, like personal houses,
depends.
or there's like a church buildings.
Depends on the church. It really depends on the location.
So the government is okay with the churches?
Yeah, of course.
It's not like persecuted?
Yeah, it's not persecuted. You could believe in Christ in Japan.
You can preach on the street or not?
Yeah, you could.
Really?
There's a church in Tokyo called Awakening Asia that does a lot of street evangelism in Shibuya, which is the most crowded crossing walk in all of the
just
world.
Like in Mexico, right?
Yeah, just like in Mexico, and of course you have to rent out a place.
Or you have to get a permission.
Yeah,
or
permit,
something.
of course. But they do that on probably every week, and they do that in Shibuya, which is in Tokyo. They do that in Okinawa, and they do a lot of ministry work
So
like that.
people of Japan, are they really hungry for Jesus, or they just don't really care in general?
In general, I think people.
Maybe in small towns it's a little different.
Yeah, in small towns it's a lot different, but in general, I think that the Japanese people, they don't really care.
Don't care.
No, it's just the fact that nobody in all, like, if you go to Japan and you ask a person about, like, if you know about Jesus Christ, they have no idea what you're talking about.
And they're not in
They have no clue.
What if you ask, do you want to know Jesus?
Yeah, well,
they said no, I don't care, right? Or
sometimes it really depends.
What if you come to any random person and say, can I pray for you?
I mean, that works.
That works?
Really? Yeah, that does work. Because, like, well, first off, we are, like, they look at us as foreigners. When we were missionaries, they look at us and they're like, why are you specifically in Japan, you know? And they're really interested on hearing, like, what your life is all about. Like, why are you here? And so that's how I would share the gospel. And mainly on the trains, where people, they would ask me questions. Like, I would actually ask them questions of, look, like, I need to go somewhere, can you help me? And they would sacrifice their whole entire evening to help me.
Because you're white, or
no? Because maybe
that works too.
That does work, but mainly it was. I remember when I was in Tokyo, I had to go to this airport because there's 3 main airports in Japan. Not Japan. 3 main airports in Tokyo. And the airport that I needed to go to was an hour and 30 minutes away from where I was by train. And I don't, like, in the trains of Tokyo, they're extremely complicated. And at the time, I had my mission team already left, and I needed to go to this airport. And this Japanese man, I actually have his contact, but he went out his way to ride with me all the way to the airport. And that, of course, I shared the gospel, or we exchanged socials, but he just sacrificed like 2 hours of his time, 3 hours by train there and back.
So people in general, they're nice,
yes,
they're good.
They're very nice.
But they're very short, right?
Oh yeah. When you get
How tall are you? How tall are you?
6'4".
6'4".
Yeah, 6'4".
So how short those people were compared to?
Well, it really depends, because Tokyo.
One head, 2 heads.
Yeah, maybe. But Tokyo, mainly, it's a lot of, like, it's just regular height because there's a lot of tourists. But if you're, like, in the smaller islands, I remember there's the very small island I was in, this old grandma. She's about 60, 63 years old. She's like, I never saw that tall of a person, because, I mean, they practically don't really explore often, but mainly probably ahead when you're going to, like, in the villages or in the countryside.
So if I look in the crowd and you there,
you
I will
probably
see your head above everybody.
Yeah, of course. It was mainly how my missions team, when they were there in December, always found me on the train, because I was the tallest.
And you don't look like Japanese.
No, I don't look like a Japanese person.
Okay, question.
Yes.
How many people came to Christ while you were preaching?
So when I was preaching, when I was in Osaka specifically, we had one that was about to commit suicide the day of, like the very same day. The same day. And one of our friends actually is very good friends with him. Best friends. They grew up with each other. And the man that came to Christ, he actually has a family, and he's only 18. He and his girlfriend, of course, had sexual relations, and then she got pregnant, and the guy in general got disowned by his family, and he was shunned by all his classmates as well, because, well, you're perceived as a delinquent at that point. And so he went to his best friend because he didn't know where to run to. And thank goodness our best friend his best friend was very good friends with us, and we led him to Christ, and his family also received Christ. Yeah. And when I was in Hokkaido, it was mainly, which is the northern part of Japan, the kids ministry, because I did 3 ministries in total in Japan: kids ministry, youth ministry, and then it was teaching English or evangelism. So, but in Hokkaido, it was mainly we would just preach the gospel to the kids, and they would talk about Jesus with their non-believing parents. And so I'm not sure if how many were saved in Hokkaido. Of course. I just planted the seeds, but I know for sure in Osaka we had one.
We did that in Mexico. We invite people to serve kids to service.
Yeah.
We give out some candies. We're preaching to them, but the kids, they come to service. They bring their parents, honestly, or they take the word and bring it to the house, or some brochures.
Exactly. Yeah.
And obviously, we don't know how many people came to Christ.
Yeah.
Only God knows.
Exactly.
What did you eat over there? Like rice?
Oh. So there's this
no steak, no American steak.
There is a Japanese type. Japanese type of steak. So my Japanese friends, they heard that I really liked meat, specifically Wagyu beef.
Beef?
Yeah, beef. And so what the Japanese have, they have something called yakiniku, which is the Japanese barbecue. And it's with Wagyu beef, which is the prime beef in all of Japan. But usually that's like on special occasions, of course. So
the food really like organic, or it's all frozen?
It's very organic. I remember my old host family, they would tell me that the grocery stores, they would not keep like products that are 3 days old. They would throw them out. They would only have fresh. Everything's fresh.
So if I buy in chicken, it was running yesterday.
Yeah, practically everything's fresh. Like the health inspection, the health details, like to the premium. And of course, yakiniku was by far for special occasions.
How did you say yakiniku?
Yeah, yakiniku.
That's their
meat. That's meat steak barbecues. But mainly it was sushi. Sushi is the thing that I ate every day. Every day.
Didn't you get tired of it?
Not really. I mean, there's a lot of variants. Right? They're all different. There's yellowtail, of course.
So what difference between the sushi that you eat here in the United States?
It's more fresh in Japan.
More fresh?
More fresh.
More
flavor, everything like that.
You feel better after you eat?
Oh, yeah, definitely. For specifically sushi, it's like, my favorite is salmon, of course. So sushi salmon was the best, but they have different styles. Of course, they have squid, but it was extremely fresh.
They eat a lot of seafood, right?
They do. I tried this dish in Japan called I forgot the name of it, but it's like this seaweed soup, and they have only seaweed and a water, and it's like our version of bouillon but with seaweed. And it's interesting. I would not eat it though, because for me it was too much. It was way too salty for me. Way too salty.
They eat a lot of salty food.
They eat a lot of.
It's just a soup like that.
Yeah, I think it's just a soup because like specifically.
Or maybe you went to the wrong restaurant.
No, it wasn't a restaurant. It was actually homemade.
Oh, okay.
So it was homemade. So it was good though, of course, for first time. But they also have natto, which is fermented beans. it smells not really the greatest, but it tastes okay. And
from a can or?
It's
fresh?
Just fresh fermented beans, and they would eat that every day in the morning.
Beans.
Natto and rice.
So there's a difference that people in town, in the bigger city, what they eat and what people eat in smaller villages.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, each village or each small island has their own cuisine. They even have their own dialect, how they speak to one another. Because like in Japanese for hello or it's like konnichiwa or thank you is like arigato. But in like the small village places that I was in Okinawa Bujima Island, it's mihederu do, which is thank you very much. It's a bit different.
So did you like to stay there?
Yes.
Would you like to just stay there forever?
Yeah. It's amazing. It's like the countryside in Japan is amazing. The people there are so sweet. And I mean,
so we have to watch you now, so you you don't run away from
maybe. Hey, God willing, you know.
But so you came to United States, and then within a week you went to
Guatemala.
Yeah,
Guatemala.
How did you get there?
So I was praying about it when I was in Japan.
You're praying about next mission?
Yes. Next mission trip.
So you didn't even think about personal life?
No, not really. Yeah. I was like, if the Lord sends me, then I'll go. Okay. And that's my mindset currently, is that if the Lord sends me somewhere, then I'll go. And if I have the opportunity, I'll go. And that's how I ended up in Guatemala. And of course, I reached out to the missions team to just clarify that I want to join, and they were glad to accompany me or
missionary team from United States in Guatemala.
Yeah, yes, my friends that did ministry school with me went to Guatemala the time I went to Sri Lanka, and they wanted to go back to Guatemala, and so
And you did the same kids ministry again?
We actually did construction.
Oh, you did construction. I didn't know you can do construction.
I mean, I didn't know either. Now I can.
Did you mix cement or something?
Yeah, mix cement.
What do you like better, preaching or mix cement?
I think preaching, but really depends on the cement, you know.
Okay.
Really depends on the cement for us.
What did you build? Churches?
All right.
Houses?
All right. So for the construction, it was built small houses.
For like poor people or
for the village,
homeless people?
For the poor village people, and we also put in stoves for the village people as well.
What stoves they use for making food or?
Yeah, for making food. So mainly how they used to do it is they have a small like apartment sized home, and they would have a kitchen. They have like beds. They have other everyday life commodities. And what they would do is, since there's no ventilation system in the home, all of the wall is covered in soot. Is covered in smoke.
Smoke from
because of the smoke. And so what we did was we put in a ventilation, and we put in like brand new stoves for them to use.
Somebody know how to do that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The ministry that we worked with.
So you had some supervisor over there.
Oh yeah, but they did not speak English, so
that's okay.
Yeah, I mean,
all they have to say, point the finger, right?
Yeah, that's how it went. Usually when that's literally how it went. Is when we were working, he would just our boss or jefe, we would call him. His name was Emolindo, and he's usually the guy that was doing all the construction or oversaw the construction. And he would just point or speak something in Spanish, and we would just do it. That's how it went. But yeah, we did. We also reinforced a bridge for one of the churches that was collapsing.
Bridge?
Yeah.
Over the river or?
Actually, there was the church is based on a mountainside, and there's only one way to get into the church, and that's through a bridge. And the bridge was collapsing due to how old it was. I think it was
bridge, like walking bridge, or you can drive through it.
A walking bridge.
It's just a walking.
Just a walking.
From
bridge.
Mountain to mountain?
No, just from the church. Just from the church.
Over the canyon or river?
Just not really. It was just actually a pretty small bridge. It's not that big.
Oh, okay.
It's a pretty small bridge.
So you didn't have to build it. You can just walk.
Well, yeah, but like it was collapsing, so we had to reinforce it with 4 more pillars, and we had to reinforce more concrete in it, and put more rebar as well. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of tear down.
The main thing, you were very fruitful, right?
Yes, the main thing that as well.
Question. Okay, you went to Japan. You went to Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
Then you came here. Within a short time, you just went to Guatemala. Mm-hmm. You're 20 years old. What about personal life? Is it really important or not at all?
For me,
it doesn't exist.
For me, I'm at a stage in life where I'm still figuring that out.
Figuring that out.
But
do you have time for that?
But I do.
Busy?
Yeah. Hey, I do want to do more missions, focused, more ministry focused things. Mm-hmm. So I've been just looking into that every day. And so I also been contacting different churches in the area, just telling my story and my side of the story. And over that, if something happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like I said, you're special person because you're here.
Yeah.
Or maybe crazy person.
Yeah, maybe.
Just
maybe,
like me.
Maybe.
In a good way.
In a good way.
I remember when I saw you first time preaching in a church. Mm. And I was like, who's this guy? He's not from here.
Yeah.
I have chicks. Mm-hmm. I have chicken in my farm. And I have an incubator. Mm-hmm. And I have a cage. And all the chicks are the same.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you see a different chick in it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, this chick is not from this cage.
Yeah.
So sometimes you see somebody in the church, it's not from this church.
Yeah.
You're not from that cage.
Yeah. I'm different.
You don't want to be in the cage.
Exactly.
Don't be in the cage.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I see you preaching, you was very energized, and you had the long hair, and you did all these.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
You always follow him, and you always keep them up, and it was amazing. I like how you. I like your. Like a motor inside of you, energy, like something generates that power.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Obviously, it's Jesus.
Yeah, of course.
Question: when you come from missionary trip, and obviously you were there for a couple months, that's enough to get used to it.
Yeah,
it's enough to get used to the power of God, to what God does through you, and what you do. And you come to Lincoln, you go to your church.
Yeah.
What do you feel? What do you see? Is there a words to describe?
Well, the words that I do want to describe, like specifically the church that I'm a part of, is I'm kind of a bit worried between the main congregation and the youth, because I remember listening to this wonderful youth pastor and evangelist, and he told just in a sermon, the moment you know that your church is in crisis, or in specifically like in the limbo, is when there's 2 different atmospheres in the main service and in the youth. Because what happens is, if there's a different atmosphere in the youth, a lot of the youth do not go to the main service because it's a whole different atmosphere, whole different culture, whole different outlook on what they perceive it as. Mm-hmm. And so the main part of that is either like it's 2 separate different churches, or if there's a move of God is happening, and the older generation either has to let the younger generation, or re-guide the younger generation towards the older generation. Is because that the younger youth, they don't really like the cultural customs in the main service. And so what happens is they don't show up to main service. And so when they grow older, and if they do come to main service, they just go back to the old way of thinking, which is, I'm just here to fill up pews and not be in a relationship with Jesus Christ.
You're talking about younger generation that born here, that raised here.
Yes.
So what you're trying to say, that the church is basically dividing in 2 churches? the younger generation and the older generation, and what to do?
I think it's just two different cultures. It's just two different. Sure. It's not dividing, but they're two distinct cultures.
What do you think we should do? I mean,
well, for me,
how do you see this? How to solve this problem?
Well, for
problem,
me,
not problem. I don't know if it's a problem.
I don't think it's a problem, but like,
problem? Okay.
Yeah, I think for specifically for me is we have to understand that we're under a house and we're under leadership and authority, and specifically for the younger generation is that there's some things that we cannot do, but we really want to, and we just. It's honestly painful for me to say this, but I remember that my friend, he's a youth leader in Canada, and he used to be part of the Brothers Bratski Soviet, or the elders group. Mm-hmm. And he told me that mainly when that happens, there's this old saying, there's a kid talking to his mom during the time of the Exodus, and the kid asked the mom, "When are we going to the Promised Land?" And the mom would say, "When our grandma has passed away." It's because the older generation has to give the baton, or give the authority, or give at least some more responsibility to the younger generation. Because, but what I am seeing is the older generation not willing to give leeway, or at least guide the younger generation into leadership. And then we're having a big gap between not only age, but also cultural and atmospheric.
And the language barriers.
Yeah.
So speaking of 20 years from now,
mm-hmm.
What do you see church? Be English-speaking church?
Yes.
No more Russian or Ukrainian.
I think that it's good. It's very good to cater to why you're here, but let's say a generic Slavic church cater to the Slavic community.
Keep coming from Ukraine.
Yes.
People will start coming from Russia probably.
Yeah, of course.
They would not know English at all.
That's why we need multiple and more Slavic churches.
Okay.
So that is catered.
So you like the idea of starting new churches in
Yes,
town.
Absolutely. I am full support in that. I think that is a very good way to evangelize to the Slavic community, but also to the American church.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do think is specifically for our Slavic church is have an English service, then have a Russian service.
Mm-hmm.
Because later on in life, like 2 generations, 3 generations down, speaking from my experience, not my experience, but where I'm at, like my kids, my grandkids.
You can speak Russian, right? You can.
But yeah, of course.
But it's hard for you.
It's hard for me. Then imagine.
So your kids probably not.
Exactly. So imagine my grandkids.
And that's not that far away. I mean,
exactly.
You're already 20, right?
Exactly.
You might have a kids next 5 years. Right?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. But yeah, so imagine like my grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
They will probably not speak Russian.
Oh, definitely.
So there has to be more either Slavic cultural.
Unless you send them there.
Exactly. Well, unless. And
For missionary.
Yes. But so my idea is just make more churches or house churches, because I really think that the house church is very good.
How house churches? Just to meet in the houses?
Yeah, meet in the houses, or like home groups like you guys have. Just have home groups or have connect groups more, because when a church is actually connected communally is a church that is strong.
But culture here in the United States is not really that set for house churches.
Yeah,
absolutely. People don't really like to invite people to their homes anymore. It used to be.
Yeah,
here.
Yeah.
It's usually good in other countries, like poor countries or smaller countries, but in the United States, nobody wants to.
Yeah, that's one way.
If you want a church, go to church. Why you have to come to my house? You know?
Yeah,
that's how people think.
Yeah, that's how people think. But that's how we should just start.
That's why youth go to coffee shop.
Yeah, that's why youth go to coffee shop, or youth goes to for worship nights. And I remember we would have like worship nights at a bonfire or at someone's house. And so that's already community and connection. And so when we just keep doing that, then we'll just have home groups either at the coffee shop or in the home. I mean, one of the biggest mega churches that were started by Francis Chan was, Francis Chan was, he did a Bible study in a coffee shop. And later on that evolved to Bible study at his house. That's usually how it goes. And over time it grows. And it just, I just think house church really emphasizes the community aspect. And I think my generation specifically is seeking not only community, but a reason why to follow Christ. Because we could fill up pews all day, but if we do not actually communicate with our own brothers and sisters after the service, are we truly even brothers and sisters to begin with? Because if we come quick as we enter the church, but leave as fast as we can, is that really community? And I think my generation wants community and is seeking community. And I think the house church is an aspect where a lot of young people are going to, specifically in California or in Orlando. Yeah.
Tough question.
Awesome.
How do you know that God's speaking to you, or you're right, or you're
so
under God's authority? Do you feel anything? Do you hear anything? How do you explain that? Where is the assurance of it?
Awesome. Well, at first, does it contradict Scripture? If it contradicts Scripture...
Yeah, that's not very strong.
Yes, but the second point is, specifically for me, is do I feel peace about it? And then the third point is if it's not from the Lord, like, what is my intentions?
Do you feel Lord in you?
Yeah.
Do you feel Him by you? Or
yeah.
What is that?
So for me, it's.
Can you explain that feeling?
Yeah, for me, it's peace.
Peace.
It's like aware I'm in a stressful situation.
So you're not stressful about it. So you're very calm. You're like.
Yeah.
Okay, but whatever happens around you, storms or tornadoes,
you
have peace in your heart?
I think, specifically for me, I just feel at peace when I'm like with the Lord, and I just have a feeling of overwhelming love as well. And I think that, and of course, and if it's not from the Lord, I'll know because of my own intentions.
Do you ever hear Lord's voice in you, or in your head, in your heart,
in
or
rare
with
occasions?
Your ears?
Yeah, in rare occasions, yes.
In rare occasions.
Yeah, for specific audibly, the Lord speaking.
Yeah, like I speaking to you.
Yeah.
Do you ever have that?
Yeah, of course.
Tell me about it.
So okay. One story. Okay, so I was in this prayer room when I was in my ministry school, SMBS, or IDT specifically, the different program. And I was reading, and I was just talking with the Lord, and specifically in prayer. And I remember fasting for 3 days. I was like, Lord, I only want to seek you. I only want to do this, And I remember when I was in my prayer room, and I heard the Lord's voice, and the Lord's like, the Lord told me, not told me specifically, but He emphasized one aspect of what I was doing. I was not in community. There is a good reason to seek the Lord, like when you're seeking Him in your private time, in your just devotions, in prayer or in worship. But if you're not in community, what are you doing? And for me, the Lord audibly told me, go to Jonah. And I was like, Lord, you probably...
You just hear His voice? Or,
yeah, just like, go to Jonah. And
go to Jonah?
Jonah, the book of Jonah.
Book of Jonah.
Book of Jonah. I was like, Lord, I thought you meant, I thought it meant Jonathan. So I was like, Lord, I'm gonna read 1 Samuel. I was like, oh, thank you, Lord. Getting all the praise from the Lord. But in reality, when I read the book of Jonah, And I read it, and it specifically, the Lord highlighted the last part of the book. Is when Jonah was blaming God because he killed like the plant. And I was just reading also how's Jonah's reaction when he went to preach the gospel of repentance to the Ninevites. And then he was surprised that God spared the Ninevites. And for me, I heard it's like, when you become a missionary, or if you want to become a missionary, that is not the heart of do not have the heart of complain. Like, do not complain when you go out into the missions field. Like, number one,
There's so many things to complain about.
There's so many things, but do not complain, because, and the aspect of when you are preaching the gospel, people always look at you. They always look of what you're doing.
The people you preach to, or
people you preach to, or just random people on the street. Random people on the street. They see what you're doing.
You become a famous or
no, okay. not in that aspect.
You don't talk about
that. Not in that aspect. But they look how you react to certain things. And so, if there's one aspect of just preaching on the pulpit, and there's actually living it out.
Yeah.
And so
preaching on the stage.
Yeah, there's preaching
on the streets.
Exactly.
It's a difference.
No, or like they're just living your life.
Yes.
Specifically.
Yes.
And for me, that's what God highlighted, because if I wanted to become a missionary, the last thing I need to do is to go preach the gospel and be to curse the same very people that I preach the gospel to. And that's what the Lord highlighted to me.
If you would hear another voice from God says, Daniel, do you want to be a millionaire or a missionary?
Oh, read the book of James. I mean, hey, the book of James talks about when you have that heart of just like, is it from the Lord or is it not? Okay. Is it actually from the Lord? Because
what would you choose? Missionary?
Well, missionary, of course. I don't need $1 million.
Okay.
I mean, I can't handle $1 million.
Everybody wants $1 million.
Everyone, but I can't handle it. I can't handle it.
So you're crazy. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, kind of.
You're not from this cage.
Yeah, I mean, hey, but for me, like I know that I cannot handle it. I can't handle $1 million.
Really?
Yeah, I can't.
You would use it for missionary.
No. Would I?
I think you would.
I mean, if that happens, yeah, praise God. But
missionary, it's not about money.
I don't think missionaries.
It's about preaching.
Yeah,
it's about saving souls.
Exactly. And for me, like, if it's specifically for that, I guess.
One more hard question.
Sure.
Do you have friends here?
Yeah.
In church.
In church, yes.
Do they support you? What you're doing?
Yeah.
Your lifestyle.
My lifestyle, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think maybe one of your friends will go with you someday to?
Yeah, I hope they do. I'm open for.
What is your plans for the next mission for your ministry? For next year or this year?
Well, the missions team that I went to in Guatemala, they want to come back to Guatemala in next year. And then there's my missions team that went to Japan, want to return in September. And so I've been just praying about that and those two events. And I also want to bring that same Guatemala team to Japan, because I want to show them like Japan and Japanese cuisine and people. And like, I just want to show them that the Japanese people need to hear the gospel.
Your heart is there.
Yeah, my heart is in Japan.
It's not here.
For me, like I will still serve, but like I know my heart is in the Asian countries. I absolutely love it. And I love the people, like hearing stories as well. Like hearing.
So, plans for a personal life? No plans?
We'll see. If the Lord shows me, opens doors, if he guides me, then he guides me. And if it is, I'll just step in faith. And if it's not, it's okay. So yeah, I'm in that aspect and walk of life.
Thank you. It was a very good conversation.
Yeah.
And the last question.
Awesome.
Our podcast called Formula of Life.
Mm-hmm.
What is your formula?
That is a long conversation.
You don't have to say a lot of words.
Yeah.
You can make it short. What is your formula for your life? I already understand that you don't have personal life and you're not planning to have it in the future couple of years.
Yeah.
I know you like to be a missionary. You do a lot of things in Japan, Guatemala, Sri Lanka. Who knows? Maybe you go to Africa or other countries.
Maybe.
Formula of your life, that your life basically around it and based on and built on around it.
I think it's Christ. Or the love of like Christ's love.
Living Christ, his voice,
exactly.
like you said today, right?
Exactly.
His revelation to you personally.
Yeah.
Personally, not in general.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people come to church, they receive general sermons, general revelations, but you're talking about personal.
Yeah.
Because you're very unique. You're very different than other chicks in the cage, right?
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Daniel, very much. God bless you. I think we will keep praying for you, and I hope everybody who see this podcast, who watch this video, they'll keep praying for you because I think they fell in love with you.
Great.
And our church and we will support you financially if that's necessary. Just feel free to ask.
Thank you.
God bless.
God bless you.
Thank you.